no mistake, this sexual perversion is pushed by communists. If you have not read the 45 Communist Goals, please do so. 19 of them address pornography, family, education, and mental health. And I will say that again. Mental health. All this mental health push that you're seeing into our schools is driven by communism. That's one thing most people do not recognize and do not see. I encourage you to do the research. Grab a copy of that book. Hopefully our friend is going to be able to republish those this summer because it's out of circulation. So watch for that on our website and on our social media pages, because you really have to understand how they infiltrated everything. Also, I want to fast forward you to 2001. 2001 was also a pivotal year in Indiana. Why? Because unbeknownst to us, at the University of Indianapolis, which is a Methodist school, Lily, again, came back into the picture, joined by the Gates Foundation. The Gates Foundation has been pivotal in pumping money into Indiana, and I'm going to tell you why. Because in 2001, Lily first laid the financial foundation to transform education in Indiana. Now, I want you to ask yourselves, why would the pharmaceutical industry get involved in education? Well, go back to the MK Ultra experiments and Lilly providing the LSD, because I'm going to tell you next what happened. So as they built this foundation at the University of Indianapolis, dumping in millions and millions of dollars, about 18 months later, here comes the Gates Foundation. They started pouring in millions of dollars. They set up what became known as the Center for Excellence in Leadership of Learning, CELL, at the University of Indianapolis. They built the platform from 2001 up, funded it through 2014. And then what happened? Well, in 2015, 2016, our schools competed for that Lilly Counseling Initiative money. How many of you remember the schools competing for that? Most people don't. Well, they did. Over $49 million dumped into our schools, over 90 some schools across the state. And they started this transformation of education that Gracie's now seeing. They had already laid the foundation with their communist and Marxist network. Now it was just the last phase. And so what happened? Well, our school then passed a referendum and included funding for mental health counselors. Well, I knew enough at the time that raised an alarm bell for me. So what happened? It passed. So I waited 2 weeks. So after that referendum was passed, and I collected all the information. I filed a Freedom of Information request with my local school, and I collected a binder full of documentation that was reports, emails, charts, graphs, the whole 9 yards, as to what was happening behind the scenes with taking this money. What it was the adaptation of social emotional learning and mental health. They go hand in hand. Why would Lilly be dumping millions of dollars in here into education, pushing social emotional learning? Social emotional learning is a Marxist agenda, going after our children's minds. I want to break down those 3 words for you because most people don't understand it. It's very confusing. The schools are lying about it. As you saw on the Accuracy and Media video, if you watched it, the schools think it's funny that they're covering up and they're lying to you. Social, we're going to break down each word. What does that mean? They want social change. Through Marxist agenda, they want social change, changing our society. Make no mistake, they are teaching critical race theory through culturally responsive teaching. This is how they're breaking down children by groups based on sexual orientation, gender identity, race, religion, age, the whole 9 yards. This is how they're doing it. They're not teaching the theory. They're putting into practice the agenda. That is what social stands for. How are they doing it? Through the emotional manipulation of our children. That is how they're doing it. They're going to force our children who believe in the American way. They're going to force them to adapt to this Marxist ideology. And what we're seeing at the State House is we are seeing children, mind you, paraded up to the podium, and they are testifying against you. They're testifying against your rights as parents. They have been programmed, thanks to Lily's agenda, into believing your rights don't exist. Their rights are first and foremost. They should have sexual rights. They should have all these other rights to identify however they wish. Because who are you to stop them? That is emotional manipulation. They put them in group circles, and they get them all thinking as a group, not as American individuals with individual rights and liberties. They want them thinking as the collective, which, make no mistake, is a communist UN propaganda, agenda, and goal. Because if they can break down those individualities, they can control our country. They can control your children, your grandchildren. That, my friends, is what emotional stands for. Transform society, social change, which is why when you go to CCAS's website, they say sex ed for social change. And you'll see all of this CRT language, white supremacy, white culture. You need to break it down. This is what they're after. Social change through the emotional manipulation of our children. So how are they doing it? Well, that comes into learning. By the curriculum, by the books, by the competencies that they're practicing on the children, by the propaganda. So when they put children in their groups each morning, they practice certain propaganda pieces. And then they will see them throughout the school, posted all over the walls, the cafeteria, the gym, whatnot. And make no mistake, this goes hand in hand with the LGBT agenda. This whole LGBT agenda, in my opinion, is nothing more than a cult. And they're grooming your children to be part of it. If you haven't heard the mother from Colorado who just exposed what happened to her daughter in a 90-minute segment after school where she was asked to be part of an art club, you should listen to it. We've posted it on our Facebook page. I encourage you to go listen to it because she breaks down how her daughter was excited and called her and wanted to participate in this art club after school. You know what it was? When she got there, it was a GSA club, Genders Sexuality Alliance Club. This is where they get the children in. They groom them start grooming them into the sexual perversion beyond what they've already learned in the classroom. And then they had her so twisted that it's taken several years for the parents to undo the damage. They pulled her out of public school, have now, I think, are homeschooling her. It has been a horrific story to listen to. I encourage you to do it because this is what's happening through the learning, the after-school clubs, the propaganda pieces that are being put throughout, in addition to all of the pornography that is coming into our schools. Our schools have been doling out pornography for years, and we didn't know. Several years ago, our local school actually uncovered it. And the parents came forward and came to us and said, what do we do? We helped them work through that process of how you push back. But you didn't know that 43 states, Indiana included an exemption for the schools and public libraries from prosecution. If you and I were to hand out that material sitting over there, we would be arrested. A level 6 felony. It's so pornographic, you can't read it or show it in the State House. They forbid you. But yet, our schools and our public libraries can dole it out without consequence. That's all part of this learning process. Social, emotional learning is Marxism. Make no mistake. So, what I want you to go away with. Now, our schools have pedophiles throughout. Unfortunately, many of the good teachers are leaving, and they're being replaced by these individuals who have been trained and groomed through the Marxist universities on how to implement this in the classroom. Sadly, they're telling people that we are part of the cause as to why teachers are leaving. It's not true. They're lying to you. Okay? I want you to know the truth. They're leaving because they don't want to do this to your children, many of them. The younger ones, they're all for it because they've been groomed on how to do it and how to teach and how to push back on parents. They're telling children, parents don't have rights. You should be able to do whatever you choose to do, however you feel, whatever makes you happy. If you want to come dressed as a boy and you're a girl, so be it, if that makes you happy. They were trained through that Lily money on how to come after your children when they identify that way and push them down the path of transgenderism. They trained them on the ASCA, American School Counselors Association, position statements. I encourage you to go read them and look them up because that is where the devil's in the details. They had a radical comeback here funded through that Lily grant money with ties to Obama and ties to Arnie Duncan's Department of Education. She is a trained Marxist. Make no mistake. That's who trained our schools on how to implement this. When COVID happened and children were locked down at home, the best thing that took place out of that was parents were finally able to see what was happening with their children's education. And when that happened, I thought to myself, we're at the end of the required 3-year training process through that Lilly grant money. So they were full speed ahead on implementation of all the sexual perversion that came along with it. So I'm thankful in one aspect that happened because parents started waking up. Parents started fighting back. And that's what we needed, is an awakening among parents and grandparents in order to take our country back. Because what Gracie's seeing, many children are held captive by that. They have no escape. Parents, we have got to band together. Grandparents, we have got to do the same thing. The American way and the American ingenuity is finding a way to pull children out of this death trap, if you will, because essentially that's what they are. In my belief, our public school system is too far gone. Many people will argue otherwise. Prove me wrong. When they are training our children to go to the State House and testify against parents, and they are marching in the hallways with signs and screaming, yelling in a Marxist fashion, you have yet to convince me that I'm wrong. I will tell you in closing, we are making headway, you guys. We are gaining ground. It is a long game, just like theirs was a long game. But we do have to take action, and we do have to take it quickly. But I do believe we can turn the Titanic, but it's going to take everybody coordinated together. Okay? We're seeing, as I've traveled the state, I have seen community after community figure out creative ways to save children. And I will tell you, the voucher system is not it. Many people are thrilled to death over the voucher money. And I get it. You can pull your kids out, put them in a private school, but I will tell you, many private schools are caving. The voucher money at some point will come with strings. Maybe not right away, but it eventually will. So, what I would encourage you to do is link arms with, if you've got a church who's willing to stand. Many of them won't, many of them are cowards. But if you've got one that will stand, link arms with them, set up a mission, and set up a private school within that church under their status. Because that's what we're starting to see happen, and that's extremely encouraging. I'll tell you 2 victories that we've had this year. But before I do that, I want to talk about another bill that John and I were talking about earlier. House Bill 1608. I want to explain something to you. Because as I fight this battle, I find myself on the opposite side of even our own side, which is difficult. I don't care. I will stand. This is where God said you stand. This is where I'll stand. Many of our bills come through our state house with no penalties, by design. Because when Kinsey published his books, he was sent on a tour to change our laws. Laws protecting women and children were drastically changed. We were stripped of all those protections. They put into place the Model Penal Code, which is what we operate off of currently. We have to understand that. So what happens? Well, now, our legislatures pass bills with no consequences to them. 1608 started out as a version of the Florida bill dealing with sexual orientation, gender identity. But when Michelle Davis amended that bill, I believe it was on second reading, when she amended that bill, she included a clause in there that most people did not catch. That clause opened the door for the Indiana Department of Education to adopt the National Sex Education Standards. If you don't know what those are, please look them up. Read them. It's loaded with this perversion. I want you to read the references in the front. I'm not going to tell you what to look for. I want you to discover it. You will be shocked. Nobody knew about that clause. And this bill only stopped the sexual perversion on children from K through third grade. Doesn't do much, because what they do after third grade is much, much worse. Again, no consequences in this bill. So I pushed back. Unfortunately, the bill passed. So here we are. So we're going to have to watch closely as the Indiana Department of Education will likely adopt those national sex education standards, which will open the door for more pedophiles to fill our schools. The two victories we did have, I'm very proud of. One, we stopped the porn in schools. Schools can no longer distribute pornography. There is a clause in our bill that says they cannot make available obscene material and matter harmful to minors. There is a process that parents can push forward when they discover a book. They have to put the books up online that are in their library through their website, so you can have access to them. We encourage you to look it up, okay? Find out what books are there. If you find one, start the process. They also cannot do it, but you know what happens? Our bill actually referred back to a penalty. When the schools push back and don't remove that material, they can be charged with a level 6 felony, just like you and I. They're no different now. Sadly, the public libraries were not included. That will be our goal next year, to go after the public libraries. Because one of the most nastiest books we have found yet is sitting over there on the shelf. You can take a look at it in a public library. Any child has access to it. Any child can pick it out with a library card. Secondly, this process was actually started several years ago, and John actually attempted to deal with it when he was in office. We defunded the Kinsey Institute. Through the budget, there's no clause. The IU, who defends this institution and has incorporated it into their university, cannot fund the Kinsey Institute, which is where all this perversion comes from. That is a huge success for us. We will have to keep an eye on it. We will have to contact the budget office, and John and I were having this conversation earlier to make sure that IU is not moving money around and still funding the institute, where they have now put up a huge statue in honor of the most notorious pedophile to ever exist, because before Jeffrey Epstein, there was Alfred Kinsey. So with that, I will leave you. There is hope, you guys. We are making headway, and we are starting to make some victories happen. So stay with us.